Good evening. Yeah, it's barely good evening, and it's actually a really good evening. Oh, yeah, it's cloudy, overcast, some would say, but the fountain is there, deep and wide. Not flowing, but it's flowing. Not that one, but the other one. Yes, what a lovely day. October 21st, and I'm still able to bike without ice and snow because that's when my bicycle, this one, gets put into the back bedroom, and it stays there until it's good enough to start driving again. I'm looking forward to walking in the Meridian Center track. Also, hopefully we'll walk outside if it doesn't get too icy, because I love the real outdoorsy fresh air, even if it gets a little colder. This morning, I traveled to Low Farm, Manitoba. And why did I go to Low Farm, Manitoba? Well, a good friend, Michael Blatz, is the mechanic, also the manager of the garage, the Low Farm Co-op Winkler Co-op Garage. I'm sure the Low Farm people all call it the Low Farm Co-op, and I would too if I lived there. But Michael has been looking after my vehicle for some time, and I appreciate him. But today was something special. Let me just tell you. He had diagnosed it a week ago that my front wheel bearing on the right side wasn't functioning that well because it was making such a huge noise while driving. So he ordered in the wheel bearing, and today I watched him take apart to get to the spent wheel bearing. Yeah, there was enough stuff there to be put into a wheelbarrow. But at the same time, I watched him meticulously, patiently, consistently take it apart, do all the things needed to get the old bearing out, and then to use the press to press in the new bearing. And when we took it for a ride, it was perfectly quiet. You know, I'm not a mechanic. I could never take anything apart and find all the parts, and I'd always have something left over. So I left it up to others. But I enjoy being able to still watch him do it. And you know what, Michael Blatz, thank you so much. It was a pleasure watching you and fixing it and making that car run smooth and silent once again. But on the way to Low Farm, I saw at least two huge operations: combine, grain cart, tractor, and a Super Bee waiting to pick up the corn from the grain carts. And I'm telling when I talked to Brunel Sabrin yesterday, and I may have mentioned this in a previous podcast, but he told me then that he hadn't heard anything under 150 bushels an acre dry. And I'm hearing, and when you see the corn, even with what Warren or somebody said on Twitter, it's cab corn. Why? Because the corn was reaching the cab. I have pictures. I've seen pictures, and I have them too, yes, because I downloaded them, where the corn was up so they could just take a picture straight away and see the corn. There was corn 12 feet tall, I bet you, and it's doing accordingly. So it's an interesting time. We're down to probably 10% of the crop left to be harvested, but it's mostly corn and maybe a few soybeans and a few late fields of flax, and of course sunflowers. I remember harvesting sunflowers with a snowmobile suit. We had initially a Massey 90 special that was traded on a 95 John Deere. But the Massey, and maybe even the John Deere, we had several sheets of plywood, And so that depending on where the wind was coming, you'd have shelter on the left, you'd have shelter on the right, and a little bit of shelter from the front, but we didn't have a window. But we would combine corn into October, maybe November, because at that time it was a longer maturing variety, and so we had to, of course, wait until some solid frost came along for the sunflowers to dry off. But I remember 1961, a drought in Manitoba. I believe the wheat went anywhere from 10 to 13 bushels an acre. And Dad had planted 2 fields of sunflowers. One was a 50-acre field of oilseeds, and I believe they did 1,200 pounds to the acre. The other field was what we called at that time the Mennonite variety, the cracking seed, and it was 75 acres, and it went 1,500 pounds to the acre. I think he got 7.5 cents a pound. It was delivered. It was first cleaned by my uncle David I. Friesen, just north of Plum Coulee, and he had a contract with Brett Young Seeds, and I don't know what the check was, but it was a pretty significant check, and my uncle was pretty proud to give it to my dad because it really saved the year, because the rest of the crops had not done well, but sunflowers did well, even when it was dry. We grew sunflowers as long as we possibly could, and then we got either root rot or head rot. And you'd think you had I remember it was one year I was still farming, and I had a beautiful field of sunflowers that was looking to go 1,500 at least pounds to the acre. And by the time we were done, the sunflower stalks, they just fell over. And I think by the time we harvested, I think we barely got 700 to 800 pounds to the acre. So the sunflower capital, it remained in name only for a number of years, because I think the only sunflowers grown for some years was probably in gardens and some wild sunflowers. But farmers took a breather, and they still haven't been able to come up with the kinds of varieties that combat some of those diseases and totally. But we still are hearing sunflower yields this year as high as 3,000 pounds an acre, and that's an awesome crop. And I don't even know what a pound of sunflower sells for off the combine, but I'm sure it's significantly higher than what we got at that point. So, so if you're seeing a combine going, it's either corn, maybe the odd late field of soybeans, some sunflowers, and maybe the odd field of flax. But I think, according to Manitoba Agriculture, and this goes back a week when they had compiled the last survey, we were down to about equal to last year at this time as far as harvest progress is concerned. On June 30th, we were 3 to 4 weeks behind. End of July, 3 weeks behind. August, and then September came along, and October, and we've caught up with just the bit of crop out there. It's not a huge amount totally, but for each individual farmer, it certainly is. Well, I just wanted to touch base with you. I've been able to get out more and have the urgent desire to do these podcasts once again. And that's after an interesting couple of years. I must say that December 20th, which is almost 2 years ago, when I fell on the ice and broke a few ribs and did a whole bunch of other damage internally. I've seen physiotherapists, I've seen massage therapists, and Dr. Joe, the chiropractor, and I still see him regularly because I really messed things up. But hey, I'm getting on with it. And then of course COVID came along, and the vertigo that I got from the fall, the impact of the fall, This week it seems like it's just about gone. Then it comes and appears a little bit, but much, much better. And that's why it's been fun getting out on a bike. And hopefully I'll be able to go for the next week or 10 days right into November. Who knows? We'll see what the weather has in store for us. So, just a favorite verse of mine. And I was just reading something on Facebook. You know, there isn't anything, good works, feeding our family properly, doing all those good things that will get us into heaven. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man cometh unto the Father but by me. That was the answer to doubting Thomas. He says, well, how in the world can we get there? When Jesus told them that he had prepared a home for them, a mansion in heaven. Well, that's what Jesus said. And then, of course, before that, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Have yourself a great evening, a great weekend. I'm busy writing articles for the Agra Post. Yes, I should have had them done sooner, but it never seems to happen. But I'm going to go home and continue writing the article with Warren Radin that I talked about yesterday. He says 5,000 bred cows up for sale to be sold before December. Most of them will go for hamburger. Those are bred cows, production cows that should be going back on cattle producers' farms to continue to produce new calves. A lot of them are going for hamburger. Well, somewhere, sometime, somehow, I will see you again. And that's Siemens says, and God bless. Look at that fountain.